So today we're going to talk about customer profiles and targeting the right people. My name's Victoria, or I prefer Vicky actually, and I've been working in the fashion industry for about 20 years, and I've helped to build a lot of new and existing brands across the world. There are lots of ways you can get in contact with me, and I'll put these up after the presentation. Today we're going to talk about customer profiles and why they're so important for your business. So let's cover two very important things right at the beginning that will make a huge difference to your mindset. And this is really to get you into the right mindset before we start the actual tips and steps. A big mistake that everybody makes is thinking that your customer is you. For a lot of people, they come up with an idea or a product when they're starting out, and they assume because it's something that they need or they want, that every single customer that will come to them for that product is them. Now, the problem with that is every person is slightly unique in that we like different colors, we like different trends, different prints, different prices, different everything. So you can't always rely purely on your own judgment. You do need to look at some data and actually have a look at the customer you're trying to target, rather than just assuming the customer is you. The second mistake that a lot of people make is that they assume that they're going to do luxury products, or they want to do luxury products. Now, this is tricky for two different reasons. If you're not within that kind of circle that do buy luxury products, or you don't know a lot of people that actually have this kind of lifestyle, the problem is that you'll also make assumptions like you do if you're thinking about your customer. The assumptions are usually the wrong ones, and you'll make decisions that are not good for your brand. So you have to do the research. Again, it's really important to be looking at the actual data. The other issue that people tend to forget when they're thinking about doing luxury products is when you're reaching for a product that's not natural to you, or even if it is natural to you, people don't actually make a lot of money on luxury items. It's assumed because they cost a lot, they retail for a high amount, that you'll make a lot of money on every single product, but this is not actually true. For companies like Gucci, Dior, all of those large brands, the bulk of their revenue, their profit, doesn't actually come from their core product, which is their clothing. So let's get on to the actual presentation and what a profile is. A customer profile or consumer profile covers lots of different things about the customer. It will tell you their likes, their dislikes, their motivations, their behavior. Now, this is not about targeting one person. It's about looking at a broad range of people, putting them into a group where they have similar characteristics, similar motivations, similar behaviors, and looking at the most common aspects of all of these different things. You also have to remember that for every single product in retail, whether it's technology or fashion or beauty, they're all slightly different. And this will also depend on the market level, including luxury or value or mid-range. It will also depend on the product itself. So if you're doing coats or outerwear, underwear, swimwear, a general range of different products, every single customer profile will be slightly different. So for some companies, you might have to look at certain aspects that other companies may not need to. For example, if you're an eco brand, you might have to consider certain areas of the lifestyle of your customer that you might not have to consider if you weren't doing an eco brand. Everything has to work together in retail to create a brand itself, a brand image, a brand profile, and your customer profile reflects the brand that you personally have. So what is it not? Well, because we're targeting customers, we're looking at data, we're looking at different aspects of people. Some people will assume that this is a way of tricking people into buying their product, or putting things in a nice way so that you're encouraging more people to buy. This is not what it's about. A customer profile is not a trick. It's a way to look at your customers and know where to put your products in front of the right group of people at the right price, at the right time, in the right way. But we're looking and concentrating only at the right people. We're not trying to be everything to everybody. So what happens if I don't do one or I ignore it? Well, a lot of companies do. A lot of companies decide that they don't want to do a customer profile. And I'm not going to lie, it does take some research and it will take up some time. But the benefits that it gives you once it's complete, it's phenomenal. It will cover so many different decisions in your business, and it will make most of these decisions so much easier for you that I would always tell people to start with a customer profile once they have an idea in mind. If you don't want to do one, I can guarantee you that this may be the difference between you being successful and not successful, because it will affect the speed at which you build a following. It will waste your time if you're doing things without a profile and you're just trying different things to engage people. You're going to be making the wrong decisions. You will. No one is that lucky that they'll make the right decision every time. It might also affect future customers. If you're putting things in front of the right people, but you're not doing it in the right way or with the right language or the right technical aspects, pictures, all those different things, your core customers, the people you are trying to attract, might not be interested. And then you'll end up having to relaunch, you'll end up having to rebrand, and you'll have to re-educate all of those people who should have been buying from you in the first place. So basically, in a nutshell, you'll be spending a lot of time and wasting a lot of money to either correct mistakes or making lots of mistakes that you didn't need to make if you'd just spent some time putting together a customer profile. So let's have a look at the profile itself. Who does it actually look at? Well, we need to make a clarification right from the beginning. A lot of the time when people are saying customer or consumer, they're using both words meaning the same thing, but actually they have slightly different meanings. A customer is somebody who pays for a product. They do the physical purchasing. A consumer is the person who uses the product. They're the people who will use the actual item itself. Now, for most brands, if we look at this little table here, your customer and your consumer is generally the same person. They'll go in, they'll purchase something, they'll wear it or use it later on. But there are a few instances where you may have to do two profiles. Kidswear, for example, if we're looking at the middle row on the table, the customer is the parent. These are the people that are going in and paying for the product. But the consumer is the child. They're the people that will be wearing the product, playing with a toy, whatever the item is. So in that case, you have to satisfy the parent because they're the ones that are going to make the decision and buy the product. But you also have to satisfy the child because they're the ones that are going to use the product. So in that case, you'll then have to look at two different customer profiles. In the same way, if we look at the bottom row, we've got another column there that says company. In terms of buyers, if you're trying to wholesale your product, the company that your buyer works for will have its own profile. So not only are you having to satisfy the customers and the consumers of that buyer, of that brand, you've also got to satisfy the buyer's company, the buyer's brand as well. So you have to make sure that all of these things are working together. So let's have a look at the actual people that we're going to cover. For every company, for every brand, you'll have different types of people. You'll have core fans, the occasional likers, and the not fussed bunch. Your core fans are about 20% of all of your customers. And the 80-20 rule that I've got there in brackets, we're going to look at that in a little bit. But your core fan base is really only 20% of the people who buy from you. They will actually buy the majority of your profit. They will be giving you the majority of all the profit that you will earn as a company. So these people are really key. Now the occasional likers, these are people that will buy frequently, but they may not have the same passion as your core fans. They might not buy religiously from you. They'll go in, they'll look around, they'll purchase something possibly infrequently. They might buy on an impulse or a whim, maybe if you've got offers on, something like that. They will promote if they're particularly impressed, but they're not going to necessarily show off your product like a core fan would. The not fussed bunch, which is the last group of people, these are the people that will come in very, very occasionally, usually when they're desperately looking for something. Maybe you're in a sale time, so they'll come in and have a look around, but generally they're not going to have any loyalty to your brand. So we're going to cut those people out. The not fussed bunch in a customer profile are not that important. They will buy or not buy depending on their own ideas and time and money and whatever is going on with themselves. You have no control over that. So we're going to take them out of the equation for the moment. The core fans, however, these are the people that we really need to concentrate on. These are the people that we need to make sure that we are satisfying, because they're only 20% of the customers that will come into your store and buy with you, but they will give you about 80% of your actual revenue. So these people are really, really important to your brand. So why is a profile so important? Well, a customer profile really will be making every decision in your business. It will tell you a whole host of things. If you're designing and creating a product, it should tell you how to design to a certain extent. Yes, you need a bit of creativity and your own styling, but once you start selling, it will tell you very, very clearly what your customers like and what they don't like in terms of design. So that will help guide you later on. It will also tell you their preferences for material, their pricing, what they can afford or what they will pay for certain items, and the quality that they expect from your products. It will also tell you things that go around the product, so where you sell the product, how you sell it, how you do your marketing, how you do your promotion, things like how you style your photo shoots, which slogans are more effective than others, where do you put all the marketing and the promotion. It will tell you a whole host of various different things. Now, a little while ago, I was having a conversation with someone, and we were having this conversation about it making all of the decisions really in your business. And they said that they didn't believe me. It couldn't possibly do this. So I thought it'd be interesting when I was putting this presentation together to give myself a little 2-minute challenge. So what I did is I timed myself and I wrote down everything that I could think of that had an effect purely based on a customer profile. And this is what I wrote down in 2 minutes. Okay, each one of those things on there, they're all different, whether it's the actual product design, how you're manufacturing, how you're promoting, marketing, all these different things. And this was only 2 minutes worth. If I'd done everything that I could think of, the entire page would be black. We'd need thousands and thousands of pages. So we'll pull out a few. Here are a few of the things that I've written on the previous page. And as you can see, it does cover lots of different aspects. So we'll take one that's really, really random, font size. Let's explain the font. Okay, so this is me on a holiday a few years ago. And I'm not particularly young, but I'm not particularly old either. I can still read very small fonts on a website. I can also navigate a website fairly easily, regardless of how tricky it is to find things. So I can maneuver around quite easily on various different websites. But the font size itself isn't going to bother me so much. If it's too small, I know how to go to my browser and change the settings. If it's too large, I can do the same thing. But if your customer, for example, is somebody older, a more mature member of the public, you have to consider the fact that they might have eye problems. They might need reading glasses. They might not be able to use a website so well. So when we're thinking about our customers, we really have to look at every single aspect of our business, from the way that your website is designed the presentation of the website, the presentation of the marketing, the promotion, the actual production, how it's produced, the cost. There's so many different things involved in a customer profile. I can't possibly cover each and every one. So what I'm trying to get across to you is that you really have to make sure that you spend the time getting your profile right. It does take a lot of time and it does take a lot of research, and unfortunately for most people the accurate data for these is not going to be free data. You will have to pay for different reports, different pieces of information from different places. But I would really, really strongly advise and stress to you that this is a very, very important document, and I can't tell people enough how important this is. If you're still not convinced, we'll go back to the 80-20 rule that we spoke about a few minutes ago. If you're not sure what that is, we've got it written at the bottom of the slide here. 80% of your profits comes from only 20% of your customers. These are your core customers that we were talking about a minute ago. So we really want to make sure that those 20% of your customers are really, really catered for. They're happy. They're satisfied with the service, with the products. They want to absolutely rave about them. Now, a customer profile will target your core fans. But what we're trying to do is make sure that we're not just hitting that 20% of people. We're trying to make sure that every person who comes across your website or your product or your store is your core customer, is your 20%. We're trying to make sure that your 20% becomes every person that sees your product, your 100%. So let's build a profile. Let's have a look at what actually goes into one. Okay, so a profile simply looks at understanding your customer. You need to understand and know your core fans really well. You need to know what they want and need, why they need it and want it, and where they want it or need it. A customer profile will cover something called demographics and psychographics. Now, the demographics is about the physical person themselves, who they are, what they do, where they are in the world, things like that, the physical aspects of that person themselves. Psychographics talk about how they think and how they behave. So their likes, their dislikes, how they buy, where they like to be, what they think about, how they make choices, how they make decisions. And these things can be quite tricky. We'll go through each area. Let's start with the demographics. Now this will cover the gender, the age, the ethnicity, the job that that person does, their family, their marital status maybe, education, income, location, religion sometimes, social grade, and generation. And if we go back, we'll have a look at the psychographics, attitudes, their beliefs, their lifestyle, personality, their behavior, their consumer habits, their interests, their style, likes and dislikes, and their wants and desires. Now, when we're looking at all of these different things, none of these things should really be considered alone. You'll have to look at various different sources for information, and that might only give you particular aspects of your customers. But all of these things will go together to make up a customer profile. You can't just look at the age of a person and assume that you understand that person. So the problem with a customer profile is that depending on your product, depending on your market level, you'll need to source different pieces of information from lots of different areas. Now, I can't possibly cover every single possible combination for all of these things. So what we're going to do is go through an actual example. We're going to start with the end result, a pen portrait, which I'll show you in just a second. And then we're going to go back and look at how we've come to make that pen portrait itself. Now, I should say before we start that there is a process. You will have to have some kind of an idea, some kind of brand or product in mind before you start a customer profile. You'll then need to go and do some data research into the sort of customer that you think you'll have, or who will like your product, the right person who will like your product. And you also have to keep in mind that this is not one person in particular, this is a group of people. And what we're trying to do is create an average person from that group information. So let's start with a pen portrait. This is your end result, and most people will actually write this in a paragraph form. I've done it in bullet points so we can take each element and go through it after this. But on the side here, you'll see I've done an illustration of the person, which a lot of people will do to give you a visual representation of your customer. I've given her a name, Sam, and I've written all these bullet points about her. Now, this is the end result. This is what we'll put together once we've collated all the information. We've become a bit of a detective and we've had to go through and sift through information and make some assumptions about what that would mean in terms of the customers. And then we've taken all of that information and our assumptions and put them into this pen portrait, this core fan, referring to one person. But actually, Sam is not one person. This refers to a group of people, your core customers, your core fans. So we have to keep that in mind as we're going through. Okay, so let's look at our pen portrait for Sam. She's 32, she loves new fashion trends and shops often for herself. She has a job that pays $25,000 a month and works for an office in Central. She's outgoing and lively. She loves Twitter, plays tennis 4 times a week, loves shopping, meeting her friends and eating out. She's single with no children. She lives alone in Wan Chai. She's Chinese, but she grew up in Manchester. She comes from a UK middle-class family and has an average to good finance for Hong Kong standards. She hopes to build a career and raise her social status and believes that with education, training and determination, she will do it. So that gives you an overview of her job, what she does for her hobbies, where she grew up, her attitudes, her beliefs, a few of her core ideas, how she shops, and a few other little details in there that we're going to go through. But you have to remember, as we do this, I'm referring to one person, our Sam customer, but this actually means a group of people. We're just referring to Sam as the core customer. Okay, so she's 32. We know her age, but this again will be a range of ages. This will be something from around maybe 25 to 38, something like that. We also know what generation she was born into. Generation, and we mentioned it earlier, refers to the generation she was born in and grew up in. Now, if you think about people who were born in the 1920s to the people who were born in the 1990s, their beliefs, their attitudes, how they carry themselves, what they think is right, what's wrong, the way they, I don't know, treat women or all these different things. This will be a generation issue. So you have to remember not just her age and how she might look or how her body might be at that particular age. You have to also consider the psychographic implications of when she was born as well. So she loves new fashion trends and she shops often for herself. From the research that we've done, we're narrowing all of this down. We know that she looks at the latest fashion trends to make her purchases. So for you as a company, that might mean that you might want to put some trend information online or in your store somewhere to help her shop and make decisions. She also shops often, which means that she'll probably replace her clothes quite quickly. She likes new and exciting things, new and exciting clothing. So we know that she's looking for the next thing. This also means that she might have very little brand loyalty. So from looking at the general information that we started with, this is by going through reports, looking at how people shop, all of these different bits of data. We've now narrowed down our group information. We've found the right group of people and we're making assumptions. We're putting them all together to come up with these 2 bullet points. These bullet points will then give you an average which then creates our pen portrait. So let's continue on to the other bullet point. She has a job that pays 25,000 and works for an office in Central. Now, for those of you who are not in Hong Kong, 25,000 is a little bit above the national average. So we know a little bit about her job and her education level at this point. If she works in an office and she's earning that kind of money, which is over the monthly average for most people, we can assume that she's probably had some kind of qualification, some level of education where she's got a fairly good job package. If she's outgoing and lively, she loves Twitter, plays tennis 4 times a week, loves shopping, meeting her friends and eating out. Well, again, if we go back to the start of our research, we know that these are her hobbies. We might have surveyed a large group of people to find out what the most common hobbies are. We might have asked for surveys for data from the government to find out what people do at various different ages and different times in their life. We've then narrowed it down and averaged it out to all of these things. The fact she likes Twitter, plays tennis, loves shopping, meeting her friends and eating out. Now, what does this tell us then as an average? Well, we know that the best social network for her is going to be on Twitter. So this is where we would advertise. We wouldn't worry too much about all of the others. But again, you'd need to rank those social networks so you're not wasting time with the least common ones. You might want to have 2 or 3 where you know that your customers are. She loves tennis and plays regularly enough for it to be a proper hobby, not just a random hobby that she might do every so often. So if you've got a sports brand, for example, you know to maybe put your advertising in a tennis format, or you know to buy in the best tennis equipment to have in your store. Her friends and eating out are important, but why? Is it mainly to do with the fact that she likes going out with her friends? Is she looking for a suitable partner? Because we do also know that she's single. Maybe she just likes a little bit of attention, showing off her new clothes, or just being out with her friends. All of these things are very, very general, and you're only going to know which ones they are by speaking to people, by surveying people, by asking questions, by observing. So it's really important to get your data from lots and lots of different sources. As I said before, she's single, she has no children, she lives alone in Wan Chai. So we know that her income is enough for her to be in a flat by herself. In Hong Kong, property is quite expensive to rent here. And if she's living alone, she either has a very, very small apartment, or she's making enough money within our range to be able to live by herself and live quite well by herself. Now, she lives in Wan Chai, which is both luxury and basic. So we can't necessarily say that she is definitely one or the other. She has no responsibilities, she has no children, so she can maybe spend a lot of her disposable income on herself, the way she looks, her appearance. But we also have to consider that because she's single and rent is quite expensive in Hong Kong, she also doesn't have financial support from a partner. They're not splitting the cost of living between 2 people. She is paying for everything herself. So it could also mean that a lot of her money goes on supporting her apartment and general living costs. Now, she's Chinese but grew up in Manchester. For those of you who don't know, Manchester is a particular city in the UK, and every city and area that a person grows up in will have a particular effect on the way that they think, the way that they grow up, the way that they understand the world, their friends, their social group, the rules that they have for social etiquette, things like that. But if her parents were from Hong Kong, they might have very traditional ways of being. They might have certain expectations on her as their daughter. They might have certain standards that they would expect her to achieve. When we're looking through our data, our product is not for necessarily purely people in Hong Kong or purely Asian-based people, and it shouldn't either be mainly Western people. There might be a mix of different influences going on here. So we have to remember that if we're looking at 2 different countries, which is why I put this little kind of thing in here, we have to consider both countries, not just the one the customer is in currently. We have to understand the influence and all the differences in growing up that she may have had on her at the time. So she comes from a UK middle class family, has an average kind of finance for Hong Kong standards. Well, we already know that she earns slightly over the average in Hong Kong. And we also have to look at where she grew up. So I'm not looking at standards in Hong Kong as to how her family developed and grew. We're looking at the UK because that is where she grew up. So for UK standards, she has a middle class family. Now that will usually mean that her parents will have some form of education because they're able to afford maybe living in a particular area, maybe they've got a particular type of home. It would also mean that their parents' jobs were fairly solid, and she's probably grown up with having a few little treats here and there. She is used to having some quality items. She's not wealthy, her family weren't rich, but they also weren't poor or struggling to pay bills. So she's grown up in an average home where she'll have a mixture of cheaper items and more quality expensive items. Now she hopes to build her career and raise her social status and believes that with education, training and determination she will do it. If she's determined to climb the social ladder, she probably presents herself quite well, and she might also present herself as slightly more affluent as she is. If we're trying to climb any kind of career ladder, social ladder, anything like that, we usually try and present ourselves in the same way as the thing that we're trying to get to, so that we try and belong. We also know that she's determined. She has her focus on work, and she'd have to maintain a professional image to do that. If she's going to further her career, she'd probably concentrate her finances on how she presents herself in her job. So we also know that she's education and work focused to achieve her goals. So that gives you a little bit of an insight into her mentality. She's probably going to make sure that she does lots of things for work, that again she's presenting herself well, that she's doing maybe some additional things to try and get ahead, maybe get a promotion or a raise. So all of these things together will give you an overview. So what do we know about Sam's product needs? Well, we're going to have a look at all the information that we've gone through, and don't forget, this is the step after we've gathered all of our data, we've pinpointed our group of people, and we've done all of this research. We've made a few assumptions, we've tried to be a bit of a detective and look at all of these different pieces of information to try and get some understanding about how Sam thinks, what she needs, what she likes, where she is in the world, where she works, all of these different aspects about her. So the core fans, because this is who Sam is, she's your core fan. It gives you a broad overview of Sam. We know that she will like products that are trend driven, cutting edge fashion. We know that she's professional looking for work. We know that she likes some luxury, but without the cost of luxury. She doesn't probably look at value products and value brands because she's grown up with some quality items in her home life when she was younger. She likes value added pricing, and she will spend if the product looks worth it, if it looks more expensive than it is. She knows the shops as she visits them often, so that each shop, each website need to be exciting and have new products every week for her to try. We know that her favourite one is Twitter, so we have to look at promoting and things on Twitter. The packaging and the branding need to look or be luxurious, promote her social status. She wants to advertise that she has maybe a little more money than she actually does. And her time in Manchester means that she has a slightly different way of thinking, and she has an adventurous personality. So all of these things that we've kind of pulled them out of those larger descriptions then mean that we have an understanding of what we need to do as developing our own brand into making her our core customer. Now, if Sam isn't your core customer and you've gone through this entire process, you might then need to go back and look at a different set of data, a different group of people, and then repeat the process until what you're coming out with is the right group of people for you, the right Sam. And at that point, we can summarize all of these things and put them into the pen portrait, which we had right at the beginning. So while you're doing all these things, there are some important notes that you will need to consider. What happens to Sam as she gets older? Well, in our group of psychographic and geographic items, we've got family and style there that I've circled. As she gets older, she might get married and has a child, so she now has a family. Her style would then have to change because her priority becomes her child. She'll have to stop shopping so much just for herself. She'll now spend more money on her home, her child, and her husband. She'll be building a life together. So the first thing that we need to remember, the first note, it's important to remember that as your customer changes over time, you're not trying to change with them. Your customer is your customer, and there will always be more people for whatever market that you are in to replace Sam as she starts to shop in a different place, for a different brand, for a different reason. It's also important to remember that you will also change over time, but your brand idea shouldn't. If this is your branding, if this is your core customer, that will stay the same over a period of time once you have the right customer profile in place. You may have to tweak it every now and again. You even might want to expand into different areas, but you have to think about yourself. As you get older, you might not be the right person that's in touch with your core market. You have to be the person that understands the customer and their needs. And if that's not you, then you might need to think about looking at other people, or at least conferring with them, asking their opinions for your customer. Now, the third note, you will have to update your profile and products and branding as things change. Technology has changed in the last 10 years. Society then also changes with the technology. So as all of these things develop, you might have to consider other things, other aspects of your business that you might not have researched in the beginning. If society is also changing, what is acceptable, what's not acceptable, you then have to move with that. Your core customer will be the same, but you might have to think about how that's reflected in all of these other areas. Do you need to then tweak the profile that you already have? Do you need to expand into a different social network? You might have to repeat some of the data collection that you did right at the beginning when these new social networks, new popular blogs, new different things come out all the time. So note 4, listen to your customers. If you know what helps them, you'll create better products, which leads to more sales. Don't forget that 80% of your profit will come from 20% of your customers, your core customers. If you're not listening to those people, you're not going to get any profit. There won't be any profit or any brand or any company for you to run. You have to make sure that you're pleasing your customer as well as keeping your design and your idea true to what you believe. But if they're asking you to tweak something, if they're not happy with a certain element, if they love something but want it in a different color or a different style or a different something, listen, ask them questions. The more you can please your customer, the more sales you're going to get. Now, obviously, this does mean that you can't specifically create a product for every person in the world. You'd go bankrupt. You just couldn't possibly do it. But if there are lots of people asking for the same thing, if lots of people are discussing it, then ask everybody. On one of your social networks, ask the people that are following you. If somebody asks a question, ask everybody else. See what the reaction is and test it. But most importantly, make sure you're listening. Note 5. People and consumer groups are everywhere, so don't forget to look outside of your target market for new ideas or development. Now, you've got your core customer, you're making them happy, and that's fine. If you want to expand, and most companies will at some point want to look at doing different things, if your product is very, very different, it might not apply to your core customer, but it might apply to a different customer. So don't forget to have a look at the periphery. Have a look at those people on the edge. They might be looking for something slightly different. It might just be a slight tweak of a color or a fabric or a certain style that would turn them into a core customer. All of these slight little differences that you could make your core customers happy with the product that already exists, but turn others into core customers just by changing a colour or a slight idea somewhere. As long as your core customers are taken care of, there is nothing wrong with trying something new. Note 6. Don't worry about geographic location so much until you need a physical retailer or distribution. Now, when we went through our list, there was a few things about where the person lived, where they shopped, different things like that. With the increase of the internet, international shipping, all these different things, they're not necessarily looking for something that's in their local area. If they like the product and you've explained to them how long it's going to take to ship, at what cost, and they're still happy, they will pay for the product. You don't have to worry about the geographic location so much. If you're thinking about opening an actual physical shop, or your product is very location specific, then you will have to look at the physical location, the geographic location of your customers. If you've got a distribution center, for example, it might not have to be in the same country, but if you're getting a lot of sales from a particular country that isn't your own, it might be an idea to set up a distribution center in that country to again help your own customers, cut down some of the cost for them, but also increase your sales. All of these things will help to improve your sales revenue and to improve the frequency of your sales. But don't worry about them so much if you're doing things online or right at the beginning, or unless you've got a product that's very, very specific to a location. Note 7. Don't forget that your location will alter their psychographic profile, so you'll need to update your information. For example, as we were looking at all the lists earlier, and we were looking at Sam, we knew that she'd been born in one country, her parents came from Hong Kong, but she grew up in the UK. There'd be a big difference in promoting to Sam in the UK as there would be if we were promoting to her in Hong Kong. There are different ways of doing things, there are different expectations, there are different cultural things that you need to consider. If you're going to set up a distribution centre, or you have a large proportion of your core customers in another country, you might also have to think about their psychographic profile. Because it might be that by tweaking a few little things again, you could also improve your sales revenue in that country as well as your own. So just by broadening your range a little bit, by looking at the little details in the product that you're already creating, you could double or even triple your sales revenue in that particular country. But you will need to do the research into the core customer in that country. So note 8. As I said earlier, your profile is an average. You can't be everything to everyone all the time. But what you need to do is look at the core data, look at the core fans, and find the similarities in the group. You just need the general idea. If one person is on Facebook and the other 1,999 are on Twitter, then you don't need to bother with Facebook. Twitter is the place to go. You can't possibly cover every single individual person. You must concentrate on the majority at the moment, and then as things expand, you can tailor things to other different smaller groups of people. Now, unfortunately, research does cost money. I'm afraid there isn't a free option with this. You'll be able to look at a few tools like Google Analytics, things like that, which are free, and they might give you some general pieces of information, but they will just be general. To actually make your business work, to make your customer profile work, you will have to go and do some proper research, and this will cost you. Hear this part and then decide that they're not going to do one. Again, usually doesn't mean that they're going to be successful later on. I do worry quite a lot when people either don't bother to do a customer profile at all or try and do one for free. If you're looking at free information, it's usually free for a reason. And for this document, because it's so important, you will have to put a bit of money into this and invest in it. There's no point, if you're not going to do it properly, there's no point doing it at all. Okay, note 10. Try to get specific information if you can. You need it on your industry as well as your market. So this means that if other people are doing something very similar to what you're trying to do, research them as well. Have a look around all the different areas of people who might be trying to do something similar. See what you can learn from them as well as the person you're trying to sell to. Note 11, what is your competition doing and who are they? Competitors will give you a huge amount of information. You need to go in, you need to have a look at their websites or their physical stores. What are they doing that's wrong? What are their customers saying online? Is there any complaints that you can see anywhere? What is it that they can tell you that you can improve on? If your customer and their customer is roughly the same person, you really need to be thinking about those people as well, because you want to make sure that you're not making the same mistakes. There is no point taking an idea from another company and just copying it, because you'll end up copying the mistakes as well as the good bits. So note 12, don't forget when you're looking at information, if you don't think something applies to your customer, don't just disregard it, don't overlook it. Still consider why it doesn't apply to your customer, because this will still give you information about them. What we're trying to do is really get to know the people who are at the other end of that computer or coming in a shop. We want to make sure that we understand them, what they want and what they need. And it gives you just as much information knowing why they won't want something or why they don't want to buy it as it will what they do buy. So note 13, social change and beliefs are very important. If you're going to stand for something, and most companies do now, most brands do, you have to make sure that you actually follow and do all the things that you say you believe in, because your customers will align with your beliefs. Everything that you say that you believe in, every aspect of your product, if you're saying you believe in quality and all these different things, your customers will also have the same beliefs and morals. They come to you because they identify with your brand. They understand you as much as you're trying to understand them. So you have to make sure that if you say something about your brand or about your product, it must be true. So note 14, social and economic issues affect everyone, and these will always affect every customer profile. So things like the downturn in America and Europe, suddenly the core customer that you had a couple of months ago won't now be able to buy your product. What you could do on the other hand though is maybe create a product that considers those things and maybe makes it in a slightly cheaper fabric or with less detailing or something like that. Something that will give them a way of still keeping with your brand, still being a core customer, someone who's passionate about your brand, and still giving them something. Because don't forget, all of these things, whether they're political, economic, or social, they always have an effect on society, and you have to understand how this will affect your particular customer profile. So note 15. This will take time, research, and effort. There are no shortcuts on this, so don't try and cut corners. If you're going to cut corners, there's no point in starting it in the first place. It's almost like going to the doctor for a cold, getting some medicine, and only taking one pill out of 14. Nothing is going to work if you don't do it fully and properly. So don't try and cut corners. So thank you for watching our presentation today. I hope you found it really, really useful. My name's Victoria and I'm from Fashion Services, where we make every part of your fashion dream a reality. If you're interested in our customer profile service, we will actually do them for you. If you'd like somebody else to do it for you professionally, and you can get in contact with us in any of these ways.